Have you ever noticed how it's always the same story? You want to talk to that person, but you don't? You want to start that project, but you put it off? You want to make that decision, but you freeze, and then you blame yourself, calling yourself weak, a coward, and indecisive. But what if I told you that you're none of those things? What if the problem isn't you, but something that's controlling you without you realizing it? In 1645, Miyamoto Musashi finished writing the Book of Five Rings inside a cave. He had fought over 60 duels and never lost. If you follow this channel, you know he didn't win because he was the strongest, but because he understood something about fear that 99% of people will never understand. He discovered that fear is not your enemy. Fear is a prison, and you're sitting inside it, thinking the bars are part of who you are. Today you'll discover exactly how Musashi broke this cycle and more. Importantly, how you can do the same, starting today. But I need to warn you, the path I'm about to show you isn't an easy one. It will require you to look at things inside yourself that you may have avoided your entire life. Before continuing, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Also, tell me in the comments, what decision is fear preventing you from making right? Now, when you externalize a fear, it helps you deal with it better or understand it more deeply. Thank you very much for your attention. Back to the video. Chapter 1, The Discovery. The story I'm going to tell you today happened to a guy named Lucas. He's not the Lucas from the last video. Imagine a different Lucas. Businessman, 32 years. Old, intelligent, articulate. But he had a problem that was destroying him from within. Every time he had to make an important decision, he would freeze. It wasn't laziness. It wasn't a lack of information. It was something deeper, more visceral, a feeling in his chest that paralyzed him completely. When he needed to hire a new employee, he put it off, end that relationship that clearly wasn't working anymore. He kept going, making that difficult call. He'd leave it for tomorrow, always for tomorrow. And worst of all, he knew exactly what he needed to do. The decision was obvious, but between knowing and doing lay a chasm he couldn't bridge. Lucas thought he was weak. He looked at other people making difficult decisions and thought, why can't I be like that? What's wrong with me? Until the day he read a quote from Musashi that changed everything. There's no fear of the unknown. There is only fear of losing what is familiar. That sentence exploded in his head because Lucas finally understood. He wasn't avoiding decisions out of fear of what might happen. He was avoiding them out of fear of letting go of what he already had. Even if what he had was a toxic relationship, even if it was a job that drained him, even if it was a version of himself that no longer worked, the known, even if bad, seemed safer than the unknown. Chapter 2. The cycle Musashi identified that most people live trapped in what he called Shin no Mi, the path of the hesitant mind. And this path works in a perfect cycle that keeps you eternally stuck. It works like this. First, you have an impulse. You want to do something, change something, decide something. The impulse is clear, clean, direct. Second, fear arises, not an obvious fear of death or physical pain. A subtle, almost invisible fear. What if it goes wrong? What if I regret it? What if people judge? Third, you negotiate. I'll wait for the right moment. I'll prepare better. I'll think it over a bit more. Negotiating seems rational, but it's just fear buying time. Fourth, you postpone. And the moment you postpone, you feel immediate relief. The discomfort of fear disappears. Your brain interprets this as, oh, I escaped danger. It rewards you with a dose of relief. 5th, guilt sets in. A few hours later or the next day, you look back and think, why didn't I do it? I'm so weak. The guilt gnaws at you, but it's never strong enough to make you act. And here's the problem. Guilt doesn't break the cycle. It fuels it, because now you're carrying more emotional weight, which makes the next decision even harder. 6th, the cycle begins again. The next time you have to decide something, you're already carrying the guilt of the last time you failed. The fear now is twofold. Fear of the unknown plus fear of failing again. Lucas lived this cycle for years. Every time he postponed a decision, the cycle grew stronger. Every time he blamed himself, it became harder to act the next time, until he understood what Musashi taught. You don't break the cycle by fighting fear. You break the cycle by changing your relationship with it. But before I show you how, you need to understand why this cycle is so powerful. And the answer lies in your brain. Your primitive brain, the part that evolved millions of years ago to keep you alive on the savannah, doesn't know the difference between a lion and a difficult conversation. To it, emotional discomfort is a real danger. And your primitive brain's number one job is to keep you alive. It's not to make you happy. It's not to make you feel fulfilled. It's solely and exclusively to keep you alive. And the best way to do that, stay in the familiar zone, because the familiar hasn't killed you yet. So every time you try something new, something that takes you out of your comfort zone, your brain goes off. Alarms. Danger, stranger, stay where you are. The problem is that your brain evolved to survive in a world where dangers were physical and immediate. Lions, snakes, rival tribes. In that world, hesitation kept you alive. But in the modern world, the dangers are different. Not making that call won't kill you today, but it could destroy your business in 6 months. Not ending. That relationship isn't fatal immediately, but it will drain your soul. For years, your brain is using software from thousands of years ago to solve today's problems. And that's why you feel stuck. Stanford University neuroscientist who has been studying fear for over 18 years has discovered something fascinating. The human brain doesn't differentiate between real and perceived threats. The amygdala, responsible for the fear response, activates the same way when you're about to be attacked by an animal as when you're about to give an important presentation. To your primitive brain, social embarrassment is equivalent to death. That's exactly what Lucas discovered. He wasn't weak. He was normal. His brain was doing exactly what was programmed to do, protect him from the unknown. But Musashi knew that understanding the problem isn't enough. You need a way out of it, and the path begins with a concept Musashi called Mushin, the mindless mind. But don't be fooled by the poetic name. This is an abstract philosophy. It's a combat technique that could save your life. Chapter 3, Mushin, the mindless mind. Imagine being in a life or death duel. Swords drawn. Your opponent stands before you. One wrong move and you're dead. In that moment, what kills you isn't the other person's sword. It's your own mind. Because if you stop to think, should I attack now? What if he counters? What if I miss? You're already dead. Hesitation is what kills. Musashi fought his first duel at age 13. He killed an adult experienced samurai. How? Because he didn't hesitate while his opponent calculated. Musashi acted. For the next 60 duels, the pattern repeated itself. His opponents were technically brilliant. They knew every form, every move, every strategy. But when it came to battle, they hesitated. And their hesitation created a half-second window, and in that window, Musashi defeated them. He realized something profound. The mind that overthinks is the mind that loses. In the moment of action, you need to be completely present, completely empty of thought, completely free of fear. This is Mushin, the mind that clings to nothing, the mind that doesn't negotiate, doesn't calculate, doesn't hesitate, the mind that simply acts. But make no mistake, I'm not telling you to. Take emotional actions with your moods high, making decisions based on nothing. I'm telling you this. If you already know what needs to be done, just do it. But here's what no one tells you. Mushin isn't something you achieve by meditating in a cave for 20 years. Mushin is something you train, and the training begins with specific practice that Musashi used every single day. Lucas applied this to his life in the following way. He identified the 3 decisions he'd been putting off for months. 3 decisions he knew he needed to make, but fear paralyzed him. Every time. First decision, fire an employee who clearly wasn't doing his job well, but was your friend. Second decision, end a relationship that was draining you emotionally. Third decision, call an investor and make a big request that could change your business, but could also result in a humiliating rejection. Here's what he did. He didn't try to convince himself. He wasn't afraid. He didn't say positive affirmations in the mirror. He didn't wait until he felt ready. He applied what Musashi called Ken no Sun taking. The initiative before the mind is time. To interfere on Monday morning at 8 o'clock a.m. before checking email, before drinking coffee, before doing anything. Elsie picked up the phone and called the employee we need to talk today at 10 a.m. He didn't think. He didn't plan. He didn't rehearse. He just acted. And here's what happened. Within the first 2 seconds of hanging up, fear exploded. What did you do? You could have waited. You could have prepared better. But something fundamental had changed. Action had already been taken. Fear arrived late. And a delayed fear is an impotent fear. The conversation took place at 10 a.m. Was it uncomfortable? Extremely. Was it difficult? Very. But it was had. And the moment it was had, Lucas felt something he hadn't felt in years. Power. Not the power to dominate others. The power to move through fear without waiting for it to disappear first. Tuesday. Second decision. The relationship. This one was harder because it involved more emotion, more history, more anticipated guilt. His mind immediately began negotiating. Wait another week. See if it gets better. Maybe you're being hasty. But Lucas had learned to recognize the voice of negotiation. And he knew that negotiation is just fear dressed up as rationality. He applied the same principle. At 7 o'clock p.m., he arrived home, sat down across from the person and said, "We need to talk about us." No preparation, no rehearsal, just initiative. The conversation was painful. There were tears. There were accusations. There were moments when he almost backed out. But he didn't, because he had understood something essential that Musashi taught. The discomfort of action is acute but passes quickly. The discomfort of inaction is chronic and lasts forever. Wednesday, third decision. The call to the investor. This was the scariest because the risk of rejection was public, professional, and permanent. His mind was in a panic. What if he laughs at you? What if he thinks you're pathetic? What if word gets out that you've been rejected? Lucas picked up the phone. He dialed, and as the phone rang, he repeated to himself the mantra Musashi had written. The only difference between the living samurai and the dead samurai is that one acted and the other hesitated. The investor complied. Lucas made the request directly without beating around the bush without excuses. The answer, it was no. But here's what Lucas discovered. The rejection stung for about 30 minutes, and then it passed completely. And what remained was something far more valuable than a yes. The certainty that he could survive a no. Chapter 4. The Principle of Familiarization. Musashi wrote something in the book of 5 Rings that confuses many people. Become familiar with death every day. People read this and think it's something morbid, depressing, or nihilistic, but it's nothing like that. It's the most practical and powerful technique there is for breaking the cycle of fear. It works like this. Your brain fears the unknown because the unknown signifies potential danger. But the moment something stops being unknown, it stops being scary. Musashi meditated on his own death every single day, not because he wanted to die, but because he wanted to remove the fear of death as a decision-making factor. If you've accepted that you're going to die, if you become familiar with the idea, it no longer has any power over you. And this applies to any fear. Fear of rejection. Familiarize yourself with rejection. Fear of failure. Familiarize yourself with failure. Fear of embarrassment. Familiarize yourself with embarrassment. How? By intentionally exposing yourself to what scares you, not to suffer, but to train your nervous system to understand that these things won't kill you down in neuroplasticity. Researcher at Harvard University who has been studying therapeutic exposure for 14 years explains when you repeatedly expose yourself to a fearful stimulus without catastrophic consequences, the amygdala learns that the stimulus is not dangerous. After approximately 10 to 15 exposures, the fear response decreases by up to 70%. You're not eliminating the fear. You're reprogramming the brain not to react to it. Lucas began an experiment. Every day, for 30 days, he would do something that made him uncomfortable. Not huge things, small but specific things. Day 1, he asked for a discount on coffee, something he would never normally do because he was afraid of appearing stingy. Day 2, he spoke to a random person in the elevator, something he always avoided because casual conversations made him anxious. Day 3, he posted a controversial opinion on social media, something he always held back because he was afraid of judgment. Each day, a small exposure to discomfort, and each day something incredible happened. He survived. Not just survived. He realized that the anticipated fear was always 10 times greater than reality. The coffee guy said no to the discount. So what? The person in the elevator gave a curt reply. So what? Some followers criticize him online. So what? Nothing catastrophic happened. And the more he exposed himself, the more his brain understood discomfort is not danger. On the 15th, something broke. Lucas realized he no longer felt that tightness in his chest before doing uncomfortable things. The sensation was still there, but it was weaker, more distant, more manageable. On the 30th, he did something that would have been impossible on the 1st. He stood on a stage in front of 200 people and gave a talk about his area of expertise. No slides, no script, just a microphone and a commitment to not hesitate. Was it perfect? No. He stuttered a few times. He forgot some things he wanted to say, but he did it. And the moment he stepped off that stage, he was no longer the same person. He'd walked on. Chapter 5. Heijoshin, the everyday mind. But here's the problem. You can train yourself to deal with specific moments of fear. But what about chronic fear? That underlying fear. That's always there, whispering that you're not good enough. that things will go wrong, that you should be careful. Musashi had an answer for this, too, and this is perhaps the most counterintuitive and most powerful technique of all. He called it Heijoshin, the everyday mind. The idea is simple, yet devastating. You should try to maintain exactly the same mental state, no matter what you're doing. No spikes. In intensity, no dramatic highs and lows, just a straight line of calm. Alert presence. Why? Because if you reserve a special mental state for moments of pressure, you're training your brain to panic when the pressure hits. This is different. This is dangerous. This is special. Go into emergency mode. But if you treat a duel with the same calmness as you treat tea, your brain won't trigger alarms. It'll think, oh, it's just one more thing. No drama. Lucas applied it like this. He stopped doing that thing everyone does before. Important meetings, presentations, difficult conversations, psyching himself out. This is important. Don't mess this up. You need to prepare yourself mentally. This kind of self-talk only does one thing. It makes you more nervous because you're telling your brain this is different. This is dangerous. Stay alert. Then he started doing the opposite before important meetings. He didn't do anything special. He didn't mentally prepare. He didn't try to psych himself up. He just showed up the same way he showed up to brush his teeth, the same way he showed up to lunch. No drama, no ritual, no special treatment. At first, it seemed irresponsible. How do you go to a multi-million-dollar meeting with the same attitude as going for coffee? But the result was shocking. Without the anxiety ritual beforehand, he arrived at meetings much calmer, much more present, much more able to react fluidly to what was happening, because he had removed a layer of anticipatory anxiety that usually made him tense before the meeting even began. 3 months after beginning to apply Musashi's principles, Lucas was unrecognizable, not because he had become an emotionless robot, but because he had broken the cycle. He still felt fear. Of course, he did, but fear no longer controlled him. He learned to move through it instead of waiting for it to pass first. And here's what no one prepares you for. When you break the cycle of fear, the people around you will feel uncomfortable. They will call you reckless, impulsive, insensitive. Why? Because your willingness to act despite fear exposes their inaction. Your courage makes their hesitation more visible, and that hurts. A friend of his literally said, "Man, you're different, colder, less human." Lucas replied, "No, I'm less stuck. There's a difference." Chapter 6, the death of the old version. But it comes at a cost. And Musashi was brutally honest about this. You can't break the cycle of fear without destroying a part of yourself. The part that wants to be loved by everyone. The part that wants to avoid discomfort. The part that wants guarantees before acting. That part can no longer exist. And death, even if symbolic, hurts because you're saying goodbye to an identity you've carried for years. The identity of caring person. The identity of sensitive person. The identity of person who thinks before acting. These identities seem like virtues, but they are often just elegant masks for cowardice. Lucas realized this when he ended that relationship. The person said, "You were always so careful with my feelings. What happened?" And he replied, "I stopped using your feelings as an excuse to avoid mine." Did that sound cruel? Maybe, but it was true. He'd spent years using caring for others as an excuse to avoid making difficult decisions, and in the process, he was being cruel to himself. A behavioral psychologist at Yale University who has been studying identity transformation For 22 years, found when you change deep-seated behavioral patterns, you experience a kind of mourning. You're mourning the old version of yourself, and the brain interprets this as a real loss. That's why genuine transformation is always accompanied by a period of intense emotional discomfort. You're not just learning new behaviors. You're killing old behaviors that were part of who you thought you were. Musashi lived this literally. After decades as a wandering samurai, he stopped fighting, not because he was afraid, but because he realized he had already proven everything he needed to prove. He retreated to the mountains, spent years in caves, wrote, painted, and sculpted. Those who knew him must have thought he had gone mad. Japan's greatest swordsman, living as a hermit. But Musashi understood something profound. You have to be willing to say goodbye even to the identity of winner. If it is holding you back, this is the part most people can't handle, because it's easier to be consistent with who you've always been than to become who you need to be. Lucas faced this when his business began to grow. He always identified himself as the guy who does everything himself. But reaching the next level required delegating, trusting, and letting go of control. The Lucas who does everything himself had to disappear so that the Lucas who leads the team could emerge. And that was painful, because that old identity had served him for years, but now it was limiting him. 6 months later, Lucas was running a company 3 times larger with a team of 15 people and working half the hours he had before. How? Because he was no longer making decisions based on fear. He was no longer avoiding difficult conversations. He was no longer postponing necessary changes. And most importantly, he no longer prided himself on putting up with bad situations. Pride in putting up with them is just another form of fear of change. But here's what he discovered that will change his life. Breaking the cycle of fear isn't a one-time event. It's a daily practice, because fear never completely disappears. It just stops controlling you. You'll wake up tomorrow and the fear will be there, whispering the same lies. Wait a little longer. It's not the right time. And what if it goes wrong? The difference is that now you know how to recognize these voices for what they are: outdated survival mechanisms trying to keep you in a comfortable cage. And you have a choice you didn't know you had. Listen and obey, or listen and act anyway. Chapter 7. The Way of the Modern Warrior. Musashi died at the age of 62, alone in a cave, writing his last text. He didn't die in a glorious duel. He died silently, having completely transcended the need to prove anything. His last written words were, "I regret nothing." Few words, but those few words contain the essence of a lifetime spent without surrendering to fear. Can you die without regret? Can you look back and not see a list of things you didn't do because you were afraid? Conversations you didn't have, risks you didn't take, versions of yourself you didn't allow yourself to be. Most people die full of regret, not because they failed, but because they never tried, because fear kept them safe, small, and quiet. And here's the brutal truth no one wants to hear. Safety isn't real. You think you're safe in your comfort zone, but you're just postponing the inevitable discomfort. You'll have difficult conversations, eventually, either because you chose to have them at the right time or because life forced you to when it was too late. You will face changes eventually, either because you initiated them or because they overwhelmed you. You will confront your fears eventually, either consciously on your terms or unconsciously when they have already controlled years of your life. And here's what Musashi knew you need to know. The fear you avoid today doesn't go away. It grows. It accumulates. It compounds until one day you look back and realize you spent your entire life serving an invisible master. Lucas isn't real, but you know him because Lucas is you. He's me. He's everyone who's ever felt that tightness in their chest before doing something important. The difference isn't that some people don't feel fear. It's that some people act in spite of it. So here's your choice. And it's a choice you'll make tomorrow, morning, and the next day, and the next. Will you listen to that voice that says, wait a little longer and obey? Or will you recognize it for what it is, an outdated survival mechanism, and act anyway? Because in the end, you're not weak. You never were. You're just trapped in a cycle Musashi identified 400 years ago. A cycle that keeps you safe, but small, comfortable, but imprisoned, surviving, but not living. And the way out is not waiting for the fear to pass. It's moving through it today, now, in that decision you've been putting off, in that conversation you've been avoiding, in that change you know you need to make. Musashi fought 60 duels and never lost. Not because he wasn't afraid, but because he understood that hesitation is what kills, not the sword you're not dueling with. Swordsmen, you're dueling with your own life. And every day you hesitate, you lose a little more ground. The question isn't whether you're afraid. The question is, will you let fear decide for you? If this video helped you or changed the way you view fear, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling us which fears you'll overcome from now on. If you've watched this far, thank you very much for your attention. Until the next video.